Hi, and welcome to Behind the Shot. This is the show where we try and get inside the mind of great photographers by taking a closer look behind one of their shots to better understand the processes and choices that photographer may have made for that individual photo. And today, it's all about capturing the moment. Hi, as always, welcome to Behind the Shot. I'm Steve Brazill, your host, and boy, do we have a great show lined up for you today. A couple of things I want to let you know about ahead of time. First of all, you can find the show notes for today's show at behindtheshot.tv. I've also got a gallery of my guests' work there that you can kind of preview what they shoot, and also all the links that you can find my guest anywhere that you want to online. So make sure that you check that out. Again, it's behindtheshot.tv. If you want to follow us online, the easiest place is Twitter or Instagram. As I have put my Facebook accounts into hibernation, that's a long story. But on Twitter or Instagram for me, it's at Steve Brazill. It's like the country Brazil, but two L's. And for the podcast, it's Behind the Shot TV, also Twitter or Instagram. And that brings us up to today's guest, which I'm not going to lie, this guest is one I've actually been a little nervous about, because today's guest shoots a style of photography that I am so interested in doing, and actually shoots like 3, maybe 4 styles of photography that I'm interested in doing. Atiba Jefferson, welcome to Behind the Shot. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure. You're not far from me. You're in Southern California. You're LA based. Mm-hmm. And I guess the best place to start with you is what you're most known for. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you're most known for your skateboard photography, right?
Yeah, skateboard photography is what I'm most known for. It's how I got started. It's what got me interested in photography, but I do feel like I do other things too as well. But I really like action. So basketball being a second love is something that I got really into, but I've always been into portraiture as well. So it's funny being an action guy, but also really liking, the intimacy of portraiture. And then also, I kind of shoot a little bit of everything. I love music. I just really love shooting things that I'm a fan of, which is skateboarding and basketball, sports, and music.
Which is, I mean, let's be honest, if you're going to photo, like I'm a live music photographer myself, that's pretty much all that I shoot. And other than portraiture around that, like, behind the scenes, backstage, meet and greet type stuff. But the 25 years that you've been shooting skateboard type action shots, you've worked with pretty much every major skateboard publication. You now work for Thrasher a lot, mm-hmm. Correct?
Okay. Yeah, I'm full-time staff at Thrasher magazine.
And you mentioned a couple of things that are interesting to me, because you could draw a distinction between basketball, which we'll get into in a second because you're well known for your basketball work as well, and skateboard in the sense that it's all sports. But they're a totally different kind of sports in many ways. It's a different type of action. Yeah. It's a different type of control environment, right? When you shot for basketball mostly, you were the actual staff photographer for our Southern California Los Angeles Lakers. During the Shaq and Kobe.
I wasn't the staff. That's Andy Bernstein. But I assisted him and shot for the Lakers and Clippers.
And we're talking about during the Shaq and Kobe years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The first 3 championships, I was working with Andy. So I was all the games. I was lucky to see Kobe win all 5 of his rings. I was in Orlando and I was here. I was in Boston when they lost. But I the staff photographer is Andy. So I just wanted to correct it.
Which is great. And
because, he taught me so much of what I know. And he was such a big influence on my skateboard photography. What I learned shooting and assisting him, I brought into my skateboarding, which was totally changed the way that I shot skateboarding. And I would do the same thing when I shot basketball. I would take what I learned from skateboarding and bring it into basketball, which gave me a whole different look into it. So it's really something that really had a huge impact. I mean, it's night and day, the knowledge that guy
I have to dive deeper into that, because that's intriguing to me. I mean, I'm one of those proponents, and I tell people, I do critique shows on this podcast as well, and I tell people all the time, stop trying to only learn from people in your genre. You can learn from everything. 100%. I don't care if you're a skateboard shooter. You can look at what a Moose Peterson does in landscape photography, and there are elements you can understand of foreground, midground, background, subject, composition, etc. So I'm really curious, just even if you can give one, what from your skateboarding world influenced your basketball work, and vice versa? What from your basketball world do you think may have influenced your skateboard stuff?
Well, I think specifically basketball, the big thing was leaf shutter and learning how to really freeze action, because before high speed sync, 250 with the flash still didn't always make things razor sharp. So Andy was shooting Hasselblads. He taught me how to use a Hasselblad, which you sync at 500th of a second with the leaf shutter, which is razor sharp, razor sharp. So I took a Hasselblad and medium format photography into skateboarding full time. People had done it before, but I was the first one to buy the big fisheye and do that, which gave me a whole different look. But what I was doing in skateboarding, which was a lot of cross process, a lot of black and white, fisheye, I brought that into my basketball photography, which that stuff had been done. All this stuff has been done, but it's like whether you kind of own that look for a little bit. And, that's what, changed my look in both worlds. Also what I got from basketball, which I would have never got, was digital. I remember they gave me a Canon, and it had like a hard drive like this big on the bottom of it. It was like, when digital first started, it was like $20,000, and it was probably 3 megapixels. But that was my first introduction to digital, and I remember seeing that and being like, this is gonna be big. This is gonna be different. You
knew right then.
Yes, 100%.
Okay, so go ahead.
So yeah, I would have never really gotten to the digital world without the basketball, because in skateboarding, it was kind of very taboo to shoot digital. A lot of people were just purists of film, which I understand.
Yeah, I mean, and I know a lot of people in music who still go into a photo pit, or they'll go into a photo pit or on a stage if they're shooting, for an artist, with digital on one hip, maybe a wide digital on the other hip, and around their neck, they'll have some film camera just to get something different in that effect.
I always have a film camera on me at all times. I still have my
still today?
I still, what I really like to do is I bring my EOS 1V, because I can just switch all my lenses. I'm a R guy now. I really love the Canon R series stuff, but I'll go into a show, specifically concerts. And I mean, that's what's awesome. You have it's almost like a Polaroid back, because you can just look at the image on the digital, know it's a set, because shooting concerts, the lighting gets tricky. Every shoot I go to, I carry a film camera, 100%.
I should start doing that. I think it would be fun. Your type of photography has led you to more Slam magazine covers than anyone else. And you also touched on the fact that you do music and you do lifestyle stuff, which I'm going to bring in on some questions I've got for you coming up later. But I do want to mention, in the video, you're wearing a Supreme shirt, which is a client. You've done Adidas, Nike, Converse. Your client list reads like a Sports Hall of Fame. ESPN, Gatorade, Oakley, Mountain Dew, Pepsi, Panasonic, Netflix, go on and on. But here's the one I want to really focus on. You mentioned the 1D series and the R series. As of October 1st, Atiba Jefferson is a new Canon Explorer of Light. So, number one, congratulations. Well earned, by the way. Your work is killer, man. Well earned.
I appreciate it.
But I need to know, when you got that call, what did that feel like?
Oh, it was unbelievable. Kevin and Rita are amazing over at Canon and have just been so good. And I'd done stuff for Canon before for Canon Canada. And it's one of those things where it's like being a little kid and there's the pickup basketball game where no one picks you, because after a certain point in your career, that's the final level, right? Like in the video game, like getting an ambassadorship from a camera company is the dream. And for me, coming from skateboarding specifically, where I've done board photo series and my own collaboration shoes and clothing, it's like cameras are the one thing where we don't really get that kind of shine. So this has just been amazing. But I think what's even more amazing about it that I've seen in just the short little time I've been with Canon is they really use you, and they're really behind me. They're really supporting me. And it's just really cool. It's such an honor to already the stuff that I have coming out and the stuff that I've done with them is way more than I thought I would get in my lifetime. So it's just been a dream, cameras are a tool that photographers use every day, and to be able to have input on this thing and, help them and test the R5 before it came out and do these things and know that my voice will be heard through them is just great. But also being a camera that I've used for 25 years, is also an amazing thing. And at this point in my career, I am getting older, not stopping anytime soon, but it's almost like you worked really hard and it paid off. So it's just great.
Well, and you've joined a very elite group of ambassadors for Canon and the Canon Explorers of Light.
Yes.
What I find interesting about this whole thing with Canon adding a couple of new Canon Explorers of Light is the worlds that they went in. So most people think of ambassadors in those, I don't know what to call it, photography standards, portraiture, commercial, landscape. Canon already has, for example, my buddy David Bergman, who is a tour photographer and live music photographer, and now somebody who is known for their sports and known for really an alternative sport in skateboarding. And I think it's really cool that they can see outside that traditional box, right? And
yes,
and go. That's
100%.
Huge.
Yeah, the biggest thing about that too is skateboarding and the world that I live in is so creative, and there's so many other creatives that I think the impact of me having this partnership with Canon is really seen in the world that I live in. I was getting a rental car the other day, and the guy working was like, "Hey, congratulations." Like, I didn't know him, and I think even in our world, skateboarding and all of it, the recognition that Canon's recognizing that as a type of photography is really great, because it is a big thing. Action sports are always considered like the big photo thing or video camera thing, sale tool, because that's all the kids want to do. They just want to shoot photos and film each other, do these things. It's not really like that in traditional sports. You don't have your one friend who's like, "Oh, let's go to the court and you shoot photos of me." No, but in skating, that's 100%. Every crew has their photographer and filmer.
Well, and with all sports, people either want to be the one taking the pictures of it or the person out there doing it.
Yeah.
So, again, recognizing the X Games type sports, I think from a major camera manufacturer is a big deal, which brings me to some questions before we get into today's shot. Yep. And that is, with the music, with the sports, with the skateboarding, and your classic studio portraits, right? I mean, you can switch gears from skateboarding to classic studio portraits in a way I've seen very few people do, because your studio portraits are truly, traditional. You can do traditional studio portraits. Yeah. I'm curious, in your head, is there a switch that you're turning to switch between those?
I think the biggest switch is knowing that I'm not getting kicked out. by the cops.
Okay.
In the
That makes
studio, I
sense.
can get comfortable, when we're shooting skating, you're technically breaking the law.
Anything can
But
happen. Yeah.
yeah, anything can happen. People get hurt. It's a hairy line of work. But it's all about light, and skateboarding has taught me to be quick. And I never know what the lighting's going to be like at the spot. I never know what the conditions are going to be like at a spot. So when I'm in the studio, I can switch out gear really quickly because I already know how things work as far as lighting and angles and stuff, because I'm so used to being rushed shooting skating that in a studio, it's super easy. I see light. I always say this. I see light. I see angles. I see photos. It's constantly always going. And
Okay,
for me,
but here's the thing though. The light that's when you're shooting skateboarding, the light is natural and it's different. When you go in the studio, there's three ways you could approach that. You could try and recreate that natural light. You could abandon that and try and recreate any kind of lighting, traditional portrait lighting that you want, or you can kind of merge the two. Do you intentionally try and leave that street type light behind and create your own unique light, or do you try and recreate what you're used to?
no, I mean, 75% of my skateboarding stills are lit by flash.
Oh, okay.
75%.
All right.
Yes. I'm a
Studio
flash. Well, it just depends, I'm really, I've tried everything. Lumidyne to, Pro Photos, Elechrome, Canon, Godox, everything. I'm constantly changing my lighting in skateboarding because the lighter the better. You have to hop fences, so you got to keep your gear light.
Right.
Now that with this partnership with Canon and seeing they have some new flashes, I'm going to switch completely over to using their flashes versus bare bulb flashes, which I've used before in the past. But yes, I'm a strobe expert. I can talk duration. I can talk high speed sync. I can talk any of that at any time.
Interesting.
So that's why when I'm in the studio, it's just as easy, because the thing is
you're at home.
Yeah, 100%. Because shooting anything outdoors, there's only two really good times of actual natural light: the beginning of the day and the end of the day. Everything in between is overhead, dark shadows, and terrible. So, that's the art of my skate photography, is knowing how to light it.
Okay, all right. Let's take that deeper then. All of your work, whenever I have a guest on, I look through their kind of body of work to try and find commonalities. And one of the things I find about you, there's a couple things. I said at the beginning, it's all about the moment, and we'll touch on that in a second. But your location portraits, your studio portraits, your skateboarding work, your basketball, whatever, your more commercial work, they all have a journalistic style to them. Regardless, I'm leaving post-processing out, right? Like you even said in the early days, some of your processing in skateboarding you kind of brought to your basketball stuff. But aside from that, the style of the root shot is very journalistic to me. How do you describe your style?
I would say very honest. I don't really try and get my subjects to be wild or crazy or not be themselves. Most of my subjects don't like being photographed, so I like to be quick, but I like it to be intimate. I like it to be themselves. Probably more on the serious side. I am blown away by like a David LaChapelle and that kind of crazy stuff, but I'm a simple person. I really like simple backgrounds in the studio, whether it's black, white, or gray. I do like color with the uniform stuff is always really nice, but I like it to be tonal a lot of times. But But yeah, just simple. For me, simple is better. But that's kind of funny that I say that, because I also really enjoy like doing gels and doing everything. But I think the journalistic side comes because Andy taught me at a young age that like you need to have your photograph be able to tell a story.
Right.
I was so trained on like just getting that one trick and that was it, and getting it perfect. No, he taught me, is like, you need to get the slam dunk, what happens after on the court, not just the moment of the slam dunk, and that really resonated with me. And a lot of photographers that I really love, I see them capturing these moments, whether it's like before the skate session, the photo of them getting kicked out, arguing with security, breaking the board, a band, like you said, whether it's in the green room, tuning their guitar, or there's those moments that are really special. And as a journalist, that's what you want to capture.
Yeah. And one of my favorite shots I've taken, music wise, was of Jonathan Davis of Korn. And it was at a thing called 48 Hours Festival years and years ago in Vegas. And to me, that's the example of what you just described. And by the way, that shot, for those that have seen it, it's not perfect. It's not sharp. It's soft. But it was one of those moments, people go into a photo pit to shoot a band, or they go to shoot skateboarding and they want to get the ollie, right? Or they want to get whatever. They want to get the guitarist stank face.
Yeah.
But in this one, it's in between songs, right? Where most photographers are putting their cameras down, which is wrong. Yeah, totally. And he's just looking out at the crowd with this smile on his face. And you can tell for that moment, he's the audience.
Yeah.
Right? That moment, which is the moment type thing, to me is where I want to go when we get into this shot, because so much of your portfolio comes down to what you just described. You got to get before the dunk. You got to get after the dunk. The timing of your shots from jump to ollie to hand sign to a facial look, even in a portrait studio, it all comes down to you manage, and it could be you shoot 9,000 shots and use one. I don't know. But you manage to capture moments that tell a story. So what's your guiding light for defining in your own head what's the moment you need?
Well, really what that is pre-visualization and knowing what you're shooting. I mean, obviously stuff happens on the fly and you don't know what's going to happen. But once you shoot skateboarding or you shoot basketball as much as I have, you can pre-visualize and you know what's about to happen, when it's about to happen, how, and you're able to kind of sit back and go, oh, okay. Before that dunk, I know he's going to cross over or do something. And then after the dunk, I'm probably going to turn my camera on the bench because they're going to go crazy, or a skateboarder makes a trick. As soon as he makes a gnarly trick, all the homies are going to come over and pile him. Right. And it's going to be this moment. So it's just anything like that. It's
like going into a photo pit for a concert, knowing the song.
Exactly. Or, I've done a couple tours where I follow the band for multiple dates, and they do the same move, the same song. So you can look at the set list and go, oh, okay, this is when Sam's going to jump on the ground. This is, when Franz is going to jump into the pit with his bass. It's going to be this song. So, anything, it's just the experience of knowing what you're going to shoot and pre-visualizing and know the image that you kind of want, know the story you want to tell, and be able to compose that photo to do it like a live show. Sometimes I like to carry a 70 to 200 in the pit because I can just poach portraits of an artist.
On stage portraits.
Yeah, because they're constantly, but I have a picture. I've never shot Kendrick Lamar one-on-one, but I have a picture where he's looking dead into my 70 to 200. You would think it was in the studio. So, that's my funnest thing to do when I shoot live concerts. But then again, you want to shoot the wide, when you're in a barrier where you can see the whole crowd. So, just pre-visualize.
And you want to shoot the crowd.
Yeah. Pre-visualizing and knowing what you want to shoot and going there with a goal is always the best.
Okay, so let's get into today's shot. Before we do, for those that are on the audio feed, let me just explain. You can go to behindtheshot.tv. You can see the photo there. You can see some stuff that I wrote about Atiba. You can see a small gallery of his work so you get a better idea. And all his links are there so that you can find him wherever you need to go. And if you're a podcast fan, you can subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, or in your podcast catcher. And in a podcast catcher, if your podcast app does support video, when you search for Behind the Shot, two options. You'll see an audio only, and you'll see a video version. Subscribe to the one that you want. And if you would leave us a review in iTunes or whatever, that would be great. Also, the video is up on Behind the Shot on YouTube. Subscribe, make sure you hit the bell, all of that type of stuff. And that way you'll know when we do our live critique shows or release a new show like this one with Atiba, which brings us to this particular shot. Now, I'm going to tell you up front, I don't know the name for this shot. I was going to ask you and I decided not to. I'm curious what it is, because in my head, I always like titling shots. In my head, this is called Chaos in the Streets. But is there, and you can see why based on this, is there a name that you named this shot?
No.
Okay. So
Cairo Foster, 2007. The skater's Cairo Foster.
Okay. So I'm going to try. I told you I was going to do this ahead of time. And jump in whenever you want, because I suck at this. This one's real. This is one of the hardest ones I've ever had to try and describe verbally for those that are on the audio feed. So picture, if you will, an urban city type scene. So you've got buildings in the background, you've got power lines in the background, plus you have wires overhead where you don't see the power poles. The buildings in the background are separated. They are behind a wrought iron fence. And that wrought iron fence is kind of like if you picture in downtown LA, you go to a parking lot, across from a theater, and it'd be the wrought iron fence that chains in the parking lot, as it were. Like with spikes on top and stuff like that. And it's separating, but through the fence, you can see some graffiti, so you can tell it's kind of deep urban area and gives you that kind of feel. Now, here's the key though. Camera left, the entire frame, except for the very bottom, is smoke and debris and dust, as though there were an explosion. Now, that explosion and that debris and dust comes across full frame from about halfway down to almost near the bottom. So exploded on the left is what it looks like, and it shot across the bottom half of the frame. The debris is dust and smoke, and apparently very large pieces of concrete is what it looks like to me. I don't know. Center frame, about the lower third, is a skateboard, but the skateboard is off the ground except for like a little teeny corner kind of landed on the ground, as though it is either leaving the ground or it's just coming back. Camera right is the interesting part. And by the way, I should say foreground subjects, the pieces of concrete. Camera right, lower third, is the skateboarder. And the skateboarder has his feet in the air. His entire body is off the ground except for his left shoulder. And his face is right at the camera. There's that moment, right? This could have been his face the other way, his face up. Yeah. No, face at the camera, and his hands. This is what tells the story to me. Because now you can hear the volume. His hands are over his ears.
Yeah.
How'd I do?
You did great. You did awesome. I mean, it's really hard to explain a picture. And, I know this picture because I was there, and you actually pointed out a lot of details that I never paid attention to before. So my hat's off to you that way. I just see Cairo and this board, but.
Okay. Interesting. All right. So you shot this, you said 2017?
2007.
Okay, so 13 years ago.
Yeah, 13
Canon
years
1D
ago.
Mark II,
Canon
according
1D
to the EXIF
Mark
data.
II. Yeah, absolutely.
70 to 200, 2.8. And here's where it gets interesting. First of all, manual mode, I get that. Yeah. White balance in the EXIF data showed that it was manual white balance. Would you remember doing that? Do you normally do that?
I stay in manual white balance, 100%. Yeah.
And what do you set it
Because
to?
things can be changed. Because when we shoot sequences, if you're in auto, I mean, some people just set it to shade or to, I set it to 5,000. That's just the color temperature that I like.
But you're shooting raw, so you can change it. But at least there's consistency in your previews.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. I like that. Now let's get to exposure. And I have people argue that, and I'll say it up front, yes, you could not take this exposure and capture this shot. First of all, you need to make an explosion. But ignoring that element, it's still a baseline for people to understand the tack. I mean, tack frickin' sharpness of this shot. From the skateboarder to the skateboard. My God, man.
Yeah.
So
I would have exposed this different now, to be honest.
Okay, so let's go there.
That was 13 years ago. I think I've learned a little bit in the last 13 years.
This was 70 millimeters, 320 ISO, f8 at 1/1000th. What would you have done different today?
I would have bumped it to 400, and I would have probably taken it down to, I would have gone to 2,000th of a second, and I probably would have brought it to 6.371 on my aperture.
Okay. And why?
Because
why those?
I've really found, like, with available light, that 2,000 really freezes action more than 1,000. Like in the rule of photography, it was always like 500. No, 500, it kind of freezes it. 1,000 is better, 2,000. But I've even shot like golfing. I need to be at like 4 to 8,000th of a second to freeze it.
So it's like when I photograph martial arts and Muay Thai and things like that, a lot of times the lighting is such that even cranked ISO, I'm lucky to get 1/400th. But in truth, to really freeze a punch, you need 6/40th to 1,000th to really honestly freeze a punch right.
Yeah. So this one, I think I got lucky because it is really sharp.
It's. Wow.
I don't know what I was doing, to be honest. I really kind of need to look back and go, why did you do that? Maybe I wanted more depth of field. Do you want me to explain the whole thing?
Which works here, by the way.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because you see from him to the fence is sharp all the way.
And the graffiti. And I actually think if the graffiti was too blurred, it would just be a color blob. But having it be graffiti is the story in a way.
Yeah, it definitely looks more street. Like everything you described, I never really thought about, but even those fences, and those fences are actually reversed. So it shows that somehow we got into this parking, it is a parking lot structure that somehow we got in there without, in a fence you're not supposed to get into. So that's the cool thing.
So I guess the main question is, first of all, where is this and what the heck is happening?
It's downtown LA. And to be honest, I don't want to spoiler alert anything. You should really, I'll send you the link to the video. It's an intro to a skateboard film. This is all fake. Obviously. Thank you. No.
Okay. Well, you know what? They pulled it off.
Yeah.
Because this is freaking awesome. And what's funny, because like I make notes, right? Just to kind of go off of so I don't forget to say.
Yeah, you go first, because it's funny that you picked this.
I was just going to say.
This photo out of everything?
Okay. So I actually had a note going, there's no way he was prepared for this, what he was seeing. And the truth is, you were totally prepared for this. That's fascinating. Okay. Wow. So nowadays, if you were when you shoot skateboarding normally, do you try and get 2,000th of a second?
Yeah, I pretty much now with hypersync flash, I stay at 2,000. Available light, I stay at 2,000 unless the light's
Did you have flash on this?
No, it's just available light. I mean, I was kind of just there shooting photos. This is an intro to video, a skateboard video for Lakai. It's a shoe company. And it was done with this guy, Ty Evans, who makes great skateboard films, and Spike Jonze. And I don't know if any of y'all know, but Spike Jonze is one of the biggest influences on me
Beastie
as
Boys.
far as everything. He was a skate photographer He was BMX, and he was a huge skateboard photographer in the 90s. And he's a huge influence on me. Also a dear friend.
Okay.
I love him. He's one of the nicest. And so they were filming this, and I showed up. Now, I will say this was the first take in Cairo, and none of us knew the explosions were going to be this intense. So this really rocked.
So is his falling real?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Because he was supposed to, you don't see it to the left, but there's a skateboard obstacle he was grinding and was supposed to make the grind. But then the explosion happened, and it just rocked him. It rocked all of us. It was like that whole shoot. I learned a lot about shooting explosions. Like, if there's an explosion, have your camera on tripod, because you will flinch. Like, you will.
Oh.
Flinch. Yeah, 100%. If you're going to shoot anything with pyro or any big explosion, have your camera on tripod, because you'll, like, no matter what.
Was this tripod?
No, I was not tripod. I think I brought my tripod out the second day, because there was a really big explosion where I went, whoa. Yeah, I'll send you a link to it. It's a video called Lakai Fully Flared, and it was a very viral intro. There's a lot of explosions going through fake walls and all kinds of really cool stuff. But yes, this is fake. So sorry, Steve.
Well, I will tell you, you managed. Now, I never thought about how did you get it so tack sharp if there was an explosion, because I would have flinched. People, go to behindtheshot.tv and look at this photo. It is, and you can see, it'll probably come through in the video, but it is freaking tack sharp. And here's the thing. The props in this, especially now knowing that it was a video shoot, but you were still surprised. So in some ways, my interpretation of the shot wasn't off, right? You didn't even expect that.
No. This looks like some kind of war photo. It's like... No.
Yes, it looks like a protest photo. Yeah. And even during that, you managed to get it perfectly composed. I mean, if you look at this from a traditional
that's a
photo,
problem with my career, I will tell you that.
Say that again.
The thing about perfectly composed, like, some people say I'm too clean of a shooter, because now there's a style, especially in a lot of stuff of the world that I live in, they like really raw, kind of loose point and shooty stuff.
Right.
I cannot help but to compose a clean photo. It's like in my DNA.
And I'm sorry, go break all the composition rules that you want once you 100%. Know them and understand why they're there. I mean, there's a reason Rembrandt lighting is popular, and it's because the masters that studied, you mentioned it earlier, light. The masters that studied light understood what worked for our mind and what was the most flattering and looked good. And it's the same thing with composition. There are certain things that lead a human's eye through a photo that are comfortable to our eye to see based on left-right position. Then go break them all you want. But
100%.
Dude,
there are no rules.
There's no rules, but when you got them, they work. So this guy is perfectly on the intersection of two rule of thirds, which goes, his leg goes right up the side of that building. Like this, the edge of that building goes right down through the arch of his foot. You've got the bottom rule of third is where visually the bottom of that fence is. The top rule of third is the exact top of those towers. The other rule of third is the edge of the smoke explosion. You've got foreground object with the rocks in the front. You've got midground object which is the skateboarder and his skateboard. You got there's so much going on in here composition wise that what I love is you took traditional composition, whether it be conscious or not, could just be second nature, but you took traditional composition ideas and made them into photojournalism where it feels random and natural. I guess I do have a question on that, actually. How'd you track him focus-wise? Like I don't care F8 or not, screwing up the focus on this would have been super easy.
Yeah, to be honest, I probably pre-focused on the obstacle he was skating. That's normally what we do. And I probably just follow through. I can track, that's what we do in basketball. I do rear button and I just track and then pull it off.
Same as me, yeah.
But
do you do single point, or do you do a range, or do you do, you've got a single point with point assist?
Single. I kind of want to do more point assist, but single.
Okay. Yeah. And do you always stay center, or do you move your focus point?
Move my focus point to what my composition wants to be.
Okay. And you have a 1D series, which then makes sense because I shoot on a 5D4 and exposure does not follow the focus point, or metering, I should say, doesn't follow my focus point.
I always stay in manual focus 99% of the time.
Oh, you're not auto. Okay. Interesting. But your rear button focus when
manual exposure.
Manual exposure. Okay,
yeah. 99% of the time manual. So whatever my meter gets tricked with, it wouldn't matter anyways.
And I shoot rear button autofocus, and it's the funniest thing. I know people who can't do it, but I'll tell you, once you spend a couple of weeks on rear button focus, you literally can't go back. Thing. It's impossible.
Yeah. No, I've many a shoot where there's multiple cameras rented, and I'm like, to my Digitech, I need rear button. Rear button is my
okay. So here's a question on your lighting, because knowing what I know now, you are a lighting master. So shooting outside. And shooting, I'm going to use skateboarding as the example here.
Yeah.
Shooting outside, shooting skateboarding that's happening middle of the day. You've got little time. You don't know what's going to happen as far as getting kicked out of a place. You bring a light with you and you're trying to balance the light to make it look natural.
No, I'm trying to overexpose the skater so my background is darker. So I'm trying to actually beat the sun by a stop.
Oh, so you're not trying to balance. You don't mind if it looks like the flash hit them.
No, that's what we like, because then it spotlights them. Spotlights the spot and brings the background down.
So you do a natural vignette. Basically, you brighten the skater to exposure.
And the spot.
Everything else is down and becomes
the stairs. Yeah, and then that way it all focuses goes on him.
That's got to also help with controlling like specular highlights from buildings and rails and things like that in the background.
Yeah, 100%. It's always great. Nothing gets blown out.
Okay, I like that. All right, so let's talk post. Because you mentioned earlier, some of your post stuff you brought from skateboard to basketball and et cetera. When you go do a shoot, regardless of what it is, what's your kind of standard post routine? You bring them into the computer. What do you do?
You mean for skating? Like if I do a skate photo, I just bump the shadows and bump contrast and try and pull back on highlights and whites if they're blown out. That's really it. I try not to yeah. I used to be like super overcooking digital photo with the
Everybody
HD,
did.
Probably 15 years ago. But now I really just try and make it look like what I saw when I saw this slide that, we always shot slide film.
You're a Lightroom user, right?
Yes. Adobe Lightroom all day. I love it so much.
Do you go into Photoshop at all? Do you use Nik or anything like that?
Yeah. Photoshop 100%, and I'm really starting to get used to the Canon utility as well. But those are the three softwares that I use. Yes.
Okay. So you mentioned you used to do some, duotone, split tone type stuff. You don't do that much anymore, because some of your shots, like if you go look at Atiba's website, atibaphoto.com, some of your black and white stuff to me is super telling of your I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. It really, to me,
the black and white, growing up in a dark room, I really look at Photoshop and Lightroom as a digital dark room. So there's a lot of techniques that I learned in a dark room that I try to apply to my post with my black and white specifically.
What would you have done to a shot like this? Any idea? Just same thing you mentioned, the shadows, the highlights?
Yeah. I would have brought up shadows, which would have had to probably open up for his face. Then I would have actually probably bumped the clarity a little bit to get the clouds to be more moody. I would have probably burned them in. I probably burnt in all those clouds and stuff just to give them more depth with the dark.
So adjustment brush stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love painting. I love that.
Okay. Do you use a Wacom tablet?
I used to. Probably when I did this, I was using a Wacom tablet. I just got an iPad Pro at the beginning of COVID to do more, but that was the most devastating thing is that, I mean, I haven't checked it yet, but like, it doesn't dodge and burn. Like there's techniques to do it, but it doesn't do the traditional one. So I just have been using my mouse.
Okay. Yeah. And I have a Wacom sitting next to me. I don't use it as often as I used to either.
Yeah.
Oh, they're great when you use them, but like I use an Apple trackpad.
Yeah, where the photo came onto it, that was the Wacom that I used. So it was actually a monitor.
Oh, a Cintiq,
really yeah, exactly.
See, I'm wondering if in Photoshop on the iPad you got layers, right?
Yeah, you got layers, and the iPad's great. They're almost there, I think they just need to add that, because when I do like the healing, like taking out blemishes and stuff, I actually prefer it on the iPad versus
because you've got the monitor you're editing right on the picture. But you could do a 50% gray layer on top, put it in overlay mode,
exactly.
And paint on it that way. I mean, it's not traditional dodging and burning, but still.
Exactly. But I'm just so used to the way I did it before that I'm kind of hoping before I was to learn a new technique that they would actually just make that happen.
Okay. So let me go a different way here. You manage to capture moments that many people miss. Either they miss focus, or they miss composition, or they, arguably most important over any technical aspect, they miss the story. And again, I'm not talking skateboarding or basketball or anything. It could be anything, right? If you're taking a landscape photo, you still need to make me want to stand there because I want to know the story, right? Yeah. So for those people like this one, there's no way in hell I would have gotten focus on this. I would have blown this shot 9 times out of 10. So what are the tips on capturing action and that moment like you do? What's your top tip for capturing?
Pre-visualization. If you're going to try and shoot action, regardless if it's slam dunk, regardless if it's an ollie down 10 stairs, most of the time where they're going to be. That it's easy. Like I knew in these clouds is the skate spot he's going to hit. So I didn't visualize him eating shit. But I'm already there. My focus is already there. My composition's already there. Pre-visualizing always, but like obviously in spontaneous situations, that back button focus and keeping your eye on the camera and keeping your eye on the action. That's another big thing. Never take your eye off the ball, so to speak, because that's where the action's happening.
Okay. So last question before we wrap up. Who is a photographer or photographic artist type person that you think people should be following that they should know about? Kind of like a pick of the week type thing. Who's that photographer out there that people need to go look up?
Oh man, there's so many. There's so many photographers that I really, 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 really enjoy. I mean, I can't even say that because there's so many that, there's all the older photographer and that's the thing in skateboarding. There's all the kind of older ones, but, there's so many, but I would say the guys who have big impacts.
People go to your Instagram. People go to your Instagram and look at who you follow.
I followed a lot of people. That was the only thing. But Grant Britton for skateboarding, he taught me so much. Andy Bernstein for basketball, he taught me so much. One hip hop photographer I really like is Jonathan Mannion. There's a lot of photographers that I don't even know them that I follow. I'm finally at an age where I'm comfortable looking at other photographers' work. I learned at a young age not to look at anyone's other work because you'll rip it off. And that's so true. and I just kept my head in the sand. And a lot of people get like, you don't know so-and-so? I'm like, no, because I just chose Walter Yost. Oh my gosh, Walter Yost is amazing.
Okay.
Sports photographer.
So there's a couple that people can follow, and I will look them up, find links, and put links in the show notes and in the YouTube video notes for that, so that you guys can go find them and look them up.
I'll send you a link to this video right when we're done, and you're gonna laugh when you see it.
Yeah, it's so. As soon as you said that, my heart kind of went, "Oh, I can't believe I missed that," because it looks so freaking real. So Atiba, first of all, again, thank you. But if people want to find you, what's your website? AtibaPhoto.com. ATIB as in boy A photo.com. Needs an update. It's been about a year, but I'm still really proud of the work that's on there. But I've been, still working through the pandemic, luckily, and I have a portrait project that I'm working on. That's like 100 portraits of skateboarders. That's a continuation off this cover of Thrasher that I did, where we shot 32 black skateboarders, all in the same style. I used just the R5 with the 50 millimeter 1.2 lens, and it's like a DMV photo, very intimate. It's just a headshot. I use the eye focus, so I'm at 1.2 on my aperture, so I'm so shallow. It's just, and I think a bunch of those are on your Instagram, right?
Yes, that was from the Thrasher cover shoot. But it's, that lens is so magical. Yeah. That I'm really just like loving this. And I do it just in open shade. It's a super simple portrait. And I've shot about 90 pro skaters that I really look up to from all walks of life, from, Tyshawn Jones, Tony Hawk, to even, the 12-year-old Sky Brown, just like a whole medley of different skateboarders. So all shot in the same specific way. So, and you can find Atiba on Instagram and Twitter. It's Atiba Photo as well, just like the website Atiba Photo. Yes, I need to be a little more active on Twitter. Facebook, I'm on there, I love Twitter. I know. Twitter's my home. I really got into Twitter once, protesting and stuff. It was really great to follow protesting and things like that. And it really gave me a new love for how much information is on Twitter that you can find different than you would on Instagram. Yeah. Me as a photographer, I love Instagram. Period, because you can just look at it. Yeah. And you're on Facebook too, Atiba.Jefferson on Facebook. So everybody go find Atiba. And again, Atiba, taking time out of your day today, dude, I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for being here, man. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Go Dodgers. Oh, and congratulations, Canon Explorer Light. Yes, thank you. I'm so honored to be on the team. Looking forward to what you do with Canon and everything. And to everybody else, just a quick reminder, I do the critique shows with Don Komarechka. We do those once a month, early in the month, and now we have a guest coming on as well and doing the critiques with us. On the last one, we actually had Jordan Drake of DP Review TV join us. If you want to get in on those, go over to Flickr, sign up for a free Flickr account or a paid Flickr account, even better. Join the Behind the Shot group, start submitting your images for fun. We will not consider them in the pool that we choose images to critique unless you tag them with a Flickr tag. That's like your permission for us to critique them. And the tag is BTS Critique, so make sure that you tag them. Other than that, everybody, thanks for joining us as always. My name is Steve Brazill. You can find me online at stevebrazill.com, like Brazil, 2 L's, behindtheshot.tv for this particular show. And for today's guest, you can find all the links to Atiba, the gallery, the little bit that I wrote about Atiba. You can find those up there as well. If you want to follow me on Instagram or Twitter, it's at Steve Brazill or at Behind the Shot TV. Both of those. Feel free to follow on both if you want to. And I always try and respond to anybody that communicates with me. To everybody else, thanks so much for watching today. Thanks to my guest, Atiba. Thanks to Canon for working this out for me, because I was really excited about today's episode. And I hope you all have a great day. We will see you on the next show.